It's another Sunday at Daishu-in West. Thanks for tuning in. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. We did have a little bit of rain this last week, an inch or two on Wednesday, and now it's just back to being sunny and beautiful. Well, we're getting ready for digest ceremony next Sunday, so I will not be doing a talk. If you're available to come, would like to pay your respects to Daijo when it's 11 o'clock on Sunday. はい。ですね、Master Obaku says, "It is only because of greed, anger, and ignorance that restraint, calm, and wisdom arise. If originally there is no delusion, how could there be enlightenment? Therefore the ancestor said, the Buddha taught all the dharmas only to treat the machinations of the mind. If I am completely without the machinations of the mind, what is the use of the dharmas? Upon the original pure Buddha, nothing can be placed. For example, if we were to adorn the void with countless jewels, in the end we cannot keep them in place. Buddha nature is the void, and even if we were to adorn it with infinite virtue and wisdom, finally they cannot remain. They only delude and blind us to the original nature." Right. Over and over, Master Obaku reminds us that there's nothing in the end that can be relied upon. Not even the Dharma itself. And all of us in our lives have relied on something or another, very frequently. Whether it's an idea or a concept, an idea of Buddhism, or whether it's a friend, a family member, a spouse, teacher, whatever it is. There's some problem, otherwise there would be no need for reliance, would there? But there's some sense of discomfort or dis-ease, uneasiness, and we compensate with that reliance. The discomfort gives rise to the reliance because we don't know how to deal with the underlying problem, whatever the discomfort is. It's like having a splinter. Sometimes this happens to me. I'll be working and I'll get a splinter or something. I'll damage myself somehow, drop a log on my foot or whatever. And oftentimes you just kind of continue on with what you're doing because you're busy and you're trying to do stuff. And it takes a day or two before you actually sit down and you're like, I know there's something wrong with my hand or my foot or, something, my brain. What is it? I need to actually take a look. And then you're like, oh, I have a splinter, I have a fracture or whatever. I need to handle this. And you identify the problem and you deal on it until you're just kind of limping around, or putting bandages on, compensating one way or another, using your other limbs, whatever it is, you develop ways of dealing with it. And it might take a little while to get around to the actual problem, if we ever do. And plenty of people have gone their entire lives and never actually taken a deep look at what the problem actually is. Let's not let it go that way, shall we? So over and over, Master Obaku reminds us that we cannot rely on anything. Even the Dharma is just a provisional medicine to treat different unease, difficulties. If there was no delusion, how could there be enlightenment? So however noble and wonderful our aspirations are, those aspirations only exist in contrast to so-called negative delusions or difficulties, greed, anger, and ignorance. And attaching to so-called positive attributes might be a good way of dealing with those. But the true Dharma, as he reminds us, is to be without both. And therefore, the ancestor said, and the ancestor here is Bodhidharma, who brought the transmission, the Dharma transmission from India to China. Bodhidharma said, the Buddha taught all the Dharmas only to treat the machinations of the mind. If I am completely without the machinations of the mind, what is the use of the Dharmas? This is me, the machinations of the mind part, this is me trying to square the circle, because he doesn't say machinations of the mind in the original text. He just says only the Buddha taught all the Dharmas. I mean, if it was a straight rendering, we would just say the Buddha taught all the Dharmas only to remove the mind. But since Master Obaku uses the mind throughout the text, uses the word mind throughout the text to mean the Buddha Dharma, it's a little tricky to translate what he's talking about here. Blofeld falls back in these situations on saying conceptual thought, which is a good way to do it, of course. I'm certainly not going to say anything against John Blofeld. I went out on a little bit of a limb here and said machinations of the mind, because it gives it that intentional quality, that sort of willful sense that we're scheming a little bit. We're trying to get away with something. And that something is usually preserving our precious idea of ourself. So in some way or another, these senses of dis-ease, these whatever it is that we're compensating for with relying on other things, invariably come back to protecting our idea of ourself. And that is a machination of the mind. It isn't quite as willful as the term I think would ordinarily be used, where we're actively scheming to kind of get away with something. It's usually more subtle and difficult to put our finger on than that. But if we have the luxury, if we take the time and have the ability to sit down and take a deep, long look, I think we find that it is, in fact, a machination of the mind, that we are trying to get away with something or scheme for our own benefit in that way. And if we were without those machinations, then what would be the use of all the Dharmas? There would just be things as they are, originally pure and perfect. Upon the original pure Buddha, nothing can be placed, he says. In the absence of disease and medicine, things are perfect. Everything is as it is. No center, no form anywhere, just codependent arising, infinite variety, changing always, and existing with no center anywhere. This is the void. For example, that's not what he says, that's me. He says, for example, if we were to adorn the void with countless jewels, in the end we cannot keep them in place. It is that codependent arising. It is constantly changing, and trying to fix anything to it is in the end futile. That void is the codependent arising of everything constantly changing. Buddha nature is the void, and even if we were to adorn it with infinite virtue and wisdom, finally they cannot remain. So even if often we're trying to adorn it with things that are not quite so wonderful, but even if we were to adorn it with infinite virtue and wisdom, those cannot remain either. They only delude and blind us to the original nature. There's nowhere to hang our hat, as it were. There's no center that we can call ourself and say, this is I. It is just that void. And nothing remains. And any provisional concept that we use to compensate for whatever it is we're so desperately afraid of could only delude and blind us to that original nature. Okay. So next week there will be no Dharma talk. We'll have the ceremony at 11 o'clock. If you're available to come, please do. Otherwise, the following Sunday, which would be the 19th, I believe, I will be back and I'll post another talk. We'll just have finished Sesshin because we have Sesshin from the 14th, and looking forward to that. Plenty of space here. Well, actually, there's not so much space here, but there's enough for a couple more people. So if you would like to come and do Sesshin, even if just for 2 or 3 days, that's fine. Get in touch. It's contact@daishuinwest.org, and I will be back on the 19th. Arigatou.